Well, it feels like months ago, but it's only been 3 weeks since Jim Chalmers' Tax Talkfest, the economic roundtable. Big and small business groups have joined forces, calling on the government to rule out a new cash flow company tax. Now, I had invited Liberal Senator Dave Sharma, the Shadow Assistant Minister for Treasury, on to talk about this topic, but there's plenty more to discuss now as well. Let's bring him in now. Dave, let's start on the tax stuff. This idea of new taxes, it doesn't seem to have gone away, with businesses now, large and small, worried about what Labor's going to do. Are you seeking commitments from the government to rule out any additional business taxes?
We would like the government to be ruling out any new taxes, both those that it's previously foreshadowed, the tax on unrealised gains, but also some of these more speculative ideas that seem to have emerged out of this economic reform roundtable. I mean, the way to get the economy growing again, and the way to get private sector activity moving in, and the way to get private investment moving in is not by taxing those activities more. It's actually by spending less and making sure that the government is not competing for key resources, whether it's labour or skills, with the private sector. And that's what we'd like to see the government doing.
The Business Council says even this talk of possible new taxes is stymieing investment. So you need to clear it up if you want to give business confidence.
I think that's right. I mean, business confidence is low in Australia. If you look at private sector investment in the latest quarterly accounts figures, that's at about a 3-decade low. It's at the sort of level of the depths of the 1990s recession. And we cannot get our economy moving again. We cannot get productivity moving in. We can't get living standards moving in unless business has confidence and optimism about the future and is prepared to make significant capital decisions based on a promising future. And at the moment, this government is not able to demonstrate that. And that's why private capital is basically sitting on the sidelines in Australia.
Now, as a former Australian ambassador to Israel, I've got to get your thoughts on the latest developments. You heard my thoughts. I'm just staggered at the lack of government response and sympathy for Israel after the terrorist attack in Jerusalem just 2 days ago. Yet they're on the front foot attacking Israel over their attack on the Hamas leadership in Doha. What's your view of these two episodes?
Well, firstly, I think the government should have come out very quickly and put out a statement, at least, or done some media condemning what was clearly a terrorist attack targeting civilians in Jerusalem. That was a terrible crime. It's only going to make the situation worse, and that should have been condemned quickly. In terms of what happened in Doha overnight, I mean, look, the political leadership of Hamas has been a legitimate target in this conflict since at least the 7th of October and possibly before. And the idea that they can sit cheering on the October 7th attacks from their luxury hotel suites in Doha and not expect themselves to be at risk in this conflict, I think is fanciful. I'm a little surprised it's taken as long as it has for that leadership to be targeted. But I think they certainly had it coming.
Yeah, well said, Dave Sharma. I wish we heard that sort of thing from our government. Now, let me go to the Jacinta Nampijinpa Price controversy. You are an Australian of Indian heritage, yet I believe you vote Liberal.
I do. I must be. Well, look, I think there's a lot more Australians of Indian heritage to vote Liberal than people might expect. But, we should always be seeking as a political movement to attract more voters and newer voters. And I think that's why this controversy, if you like, or these comments, have been, I think, so regrettable and so damaging.
Well, do you think that her comments, Jacinta Nampijinpa Price's comments, have insulted the Indian community in Australia? Could it damage the party politically? Does she need to apologise?
Well, look, I know they have. I mean, I've heard from members of the Indian community directly about this, including, there's many members of the Indian community who are Liberal Party members who've been in touch with me about this, and they've told me what their friends and families and colleagues and business partners and associates are saying. So, yes, of course, it's done us damage. And yes, we should seek to move on from it as quickly as possible. And yes, I think Jacinta should be crystal clear in an apology about that. No one's trying to silence her in terms of talking about migration numbers. There's a legitimate debate to be had about what is a sustainable level of migration in Australia. But unfortunately, the legitimate point she was making was, corrupted or, distorted by what she herself has recognised were clumsy comments, tying them back to the Indian community. And the quicker we can move on from this, Chris, the better.
Well, that's for sure. Now, you would have seen those comments I just showed from her today when she was asked to express her support for Susan Lee's leadership. She pointedly didn't do that. She said that's a matter for the party room. Is this issue now being used as some sort of stalking horse for leadership leadership debate, leadership resentment, leadership contention within the party?
Look, I'm not sure. I hope not. But I would say that if you're in the shadow ministry, and I am, and Jacinta Trudeau as well, and you don't feel like you can support the leader, and you don't support the direction they're taking the country, then the option open to you is pretty clear, and that's to resign from the shadow ministry.
So if Jacinta Price can't express full support in the leader, she shouldn't be in the shadow ministry.
Well, that's my view. I mean, what are you doing in the shadow ministry if you don't support the leader's direction? I just don't think that two positions are compatible.
Strong words, Dave Sharma. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, Chris.